You know, we've all seen Vikings on TV. Those tough warriors with beards, charging into battle with axes in their hands. Their lives seem to be only about fighting, battles, and taking things from others. Pretty simple guys, right? We think they only showed feelings by grunting and fighting. But what if I told you that under all that leather and anger, these Viking warriors were writing some of the sweetest, most loving messages you've ever seen? Messages that would make even the most romantic people stop and think, wow, that's really sweet. Tonight, you are Bjorn, a warrior from 9th century Norway. You just got a runestone. It's not about a great battle or land you won. It's about something much more special. A message from your sworn brother. Your shield companion, carved in stone to last forever. The runes talk about bonds deeper than brotherhood, about nights shared under northern stars, about a love that couldn't be spoken out loud in the great halls, but was whispered forever through ancient symbols. These runestones, found across Scandinavia over the past 100 years, tell a story that Hollywood forgot. Carved with great care, these messages prove that Viking warriors understood something we're only now learning. That being strong and being tender aren't opposites. They go together. The most interesting examples found in Sweden and Norway today use special words that scientists politely describe as unusually loving. Which really means, wow, these guys really cared for each other, didn't they? This discovery, made through careful study of language and digging up old things over the past several decades, shows something amazing about Viking masculinity and how they showed feelings. As we settle in tonight, we're going to discover not just what scientists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in North Scandinavia between 800 and 1050 CE. But before we begin this journey together, write in the comments where you are listening from. It's interesting to learn where in the world you are. Also, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Now, dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about Viking warriors and the ability of the human heart to find love in the most unexpected places. Chapter 1. The Stone That Wouldn't Stay Silent. The Oklunda runestone stood in a Swedish field for over 1,000 years before anyone truly understood what it was saying. Found in Östergötland, Sweden, this stone had been documented, photographed, and recorded with the care that archaeologists bring to such things. Standard memorial stone, they thought. The usual stuff about bravery and family. How very wrong they were. You see, the Vikings had a clever system for public and private communication, all mixed together on the same stone. Like posting on social media, but carving your deepest feelings into granite instead. Much more permanent. And you can't delete it when you're embarrassed later. The surface level of these runestones announced publicly acceptable relationships. Here lies Gunnar, great warrior, loyal to his lord. But the language choices, the specific runes selected, the poetry hidden in the phrasing, that's where the truth lived. When language experts finally got around to properly studying the stone in the late 20th century, yes, it took them that long, they discovered something that made several very serious scientists nearly drop their coffee. The stone wasn't just remembering a fallen warrior. It was a love letter, carved in stone from one man to another. Using every language trick the Norse language had to say, I loved him, in a way that the community would read as I respected him, but anyone who truly understood would know it meant something much deeper. The person who paid for the stone, let's call him Eric, though that's not the name on the stone because I'm being scientifically responsible, used a special grammar form that only appeared in Norse poetry when describing the most close bonds. The word vinner appears, which means friend but it's changed with describing words that in other contexts describe married lovers. Sneaky, really brilliantly sneaky. But Eric didn't stop there, because when you're carving your sadness and love into stone, forever, you don't do things halfway. The stone describes the dead warrior as the one who was most dear to me in this world, using dear, a term that appears in Norse marriage promises. Then it goes further, describing how they were never apart in life, using language that specifically echoes the concept of sworn brothers, but with a strength that made scholars realize they were looking at something more. The placement of this stone is equally telling. It's not in the main burial ground where warriors typically built monuments to their fallen friends. It's positioned overlooking a valley at a spot where, and this detail makes me rather emotional, two paths come together. The symbolism would have been absolutely clear to anyone in that community who understood such things. Two separate paths becoming one. Modern archaeological study has revealed something even more interesting about these runestones. When looked at under certain lighting conditions, many show evidence of having been visited repeatedly over many years. The stone develops a subtle shine at hand height, where someone touched it regularly. On this stone, this wear pattern appears exactly where the phrase "most dear to me" is carved. Someone visited this stone often for many years and placed their hand on those specific words. It doesn't take much imagination to picture Eric growing older, making the journey to touch those runes and remember. The Viking age, we're learning, had space for these relationships in ways that might surprise us. The concept of sworn brotherhood, fosbridrelag in Old Norse, was legally recognized and socially accepted. Two men could make promises to each other that were binding in law, share property, inherit from each other, and live together openly. The ceremonies for these unions involved witnesses and walking together under a strip of grass raised on a spear, symbolically passing together under the earth and emerging reborn as brothers. But some of these sworn brotherhoods were, clearly, more than brotherly. The Sagas, when you read them with attention to language details rather than Victorian-era translations, are absolutely filled with these relationships. Men who are dearer to each other than women. Warriors who shared one bed and one heart. Companions who die dramatically rather than live without each other. The scholars who first translated these texts in the 19th century did some rather creative editing, shall we say. The Oklunda stone forced archaeologists to go back and look at hundreds of other runestones with fresh eyes. What they found was amazing. A pattern of language markers repeated across Scandinavia that suggested these close warrior bonds were far from unusual. In fact, they might have been remarkably common, hidden in plain sight on monuments that had been photographed, recorded, and misunderstood for over a century. Chapter 2. The Grammar of Love in a Violent Age. Old Norse is a magnificently expressive language, particularly when it comes to describing relationships between people. It has, for instance, 17 different words for different types of friendship, each with subtle shades of meaning that English barely captures. This language richness wasn't accidental. It reflected a culture that thought deeply about human connections and needed vocabulary to express those differences. The word astvina appears on several runestones, and it's caused scholars lots of fascinating debate. Literally, it translates as love friend or affection friend, and in the context of the Sagas, it describes a bond that goes beyond ordinary friendship, but exists in this interesting space between different types of love. When we find this word on runestones, particularly when one man is remembering another, it tells us something rather important. But here's where it gets deliciously complicated. Old Norse also had entirely straightforward words for romantic partner or lover, elskugi being one example. So why use astvina instead? Well, because runestones were public monuments, weren't they? They stood in community spaces where everyone could see them. Using astvina allowed the person to express genuine affection while maintaining social propriety. It's rather like how in certain periods of recent history people spoke of confirmed bachelors and very good friends. Everyone who needed to know. The Oroka runestone in Östergötland, Sweden, one of the most famous runestones ever discovered, provides us with a masterclass in this coded language. For decades, scholars thought it was primarily about mythological events and heroic deeds. Then someone actually bothered to analyze the grammar of certain phrases, and suddenly the stone revealed a much more personal story. The stone was commissioned by a man named Varin for someone named Vamorda. And while the traditional translation suggested a father mourning a son, the language tells a different story. The age indicators aren't consistent with a parent-child relationship. The emotional intensity, the specific phrases used, the poetic structures employed, they're consistent with something else entirely. Varin describes Vamorda as the young warrior, using describing words that emphasize beauty and vitality in ways that don't typically appear in fatherly grief. More tellingly, the stone includes a passage describing how Vamorda was bright as the day using bjarta, a word that in Norse poetry typically describes physical beauty and attraction, not virtue or character. Then there's the phrase about how his loss darkened the world using vocabulary that appears in love poetry, not eulogies, but the truly revealing detail is in the mythological section of the stone. Varin includes a reference to Odin's grief for Balder, the most beautiful of the gods. In Norse mythology, Odin's mourning for Balder is described with language that scholars note is unusually intense and difficult to categorize. By comparing his own grief to Odin's mourning for Balder, Varin was doing something rather clever. He was placing his loss in a mythological context that justified the depth of his emotion. Archaeological context supports this interpretation. The ROK stone isn't positioned like a typical family memorial. It's located along a road where it would be seen by travelers, positioned to catch the light at sunset. Someone wanted this message to be visible, to be read, to be understood by those passing by. The stone becomes not just a memorial, but a declaration. The grammar of these stones reveals patterns that modern scholars are only beginning to fully appreciate. Old Norse had different verb forms depending on the emotional closeness between subject and object. When describing actions between distant acquaintances, you used one form. Between close friends, another. Between close companions, yet another. Grammar choices survive in the runes, encoding emotional relationships for anyone who knows how to read them. On multiple runestones across Sweden and Norway, we find this specific grammar pattern. The person who paid for the stone describes the deceased using verb forms typically reserved for the most close relationships, then immediately follows with a phrase establishing them as sworn brothers or companions. It's a pattern. First, the emotional truth, then the socially acceptable framework for understanding it. The Vikings weren't stupid about this. Mind you, they lived in tight-knit communities where everyone knew everyone else's business. These runestones stood in public spaces for centuries. The language had to serve multiple purposes: remembering the deceased, expressing genuine emotion, and navigating social expectations. That they managed all three at the same time speaks to a sophisticated understanding of language, love, and social dynamics. Chapter 3. Shields, beds, and shared lives. Daily life for Viking warriors involved considerably more than popular culture suggests. Yes, there was raiding and trading and all that adventurous traveling about in longships. But most of a warrior's life was actually rather domestic. Managing farms, settling legal disputes, attending community gatherings, and maintaining the complex web of social relationships that made Norse society function. Sworn brothers lived together openly. They shared longhouses, managed joint property, and made decisions together as a unit. The archaeological evidence from Viking Age settlements shows residential patterns that support this. In excavations of Norse farmsteads, we find longhouses with sleeping arrangements that suggest paired warriors living together, sometimes for decades. The sagas describe the daily closeness of these relationships with a casualness that suggests it was utterly normal. Warriors share beds. The sagas mention this repeatedly without comment, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. They share meals from the same bowl, drink from the same cup, and own property jointly. They're described as being always together, or never parted by more than speaking distance. One saga describes two warriors who shared one sleeping closet and were together day and night. Another mentions companions who had one purse between them and thought the same thoughts. These aren't hidden meanings. They're straightforward descriptions of shared lives presented without any sense that this required explanation or justification. The legal framework for Fosbreidralag sworn brotherhood is preserved in Icelandic law codes, and it's remarkably specific. Sworn brothers could inherit from each other in the absence of direct heirs. They could represent each other in legal matters. If one was killed, the other had the right and obligation to pursue compensation or revenge. They were legally recognized as family. But more than legal, rights. These relationships had social recognition. When two warriors established sworn brotherhood, there was a ceremony witnessed by the community. They would stand together under a strip of grass raised on a spear, allowing the earth to pass over their heads, a symbolic death and rebirth as brothers. They exchanged promises, mixed their blood, and swore oaths before gods and men. The archaeological record shows us what happened after these ceremonies. Some pairs of warriors are buried together in double graves with their weapons arranged to touch or overlap. Their grave goods sometimes include matching items, identical rings, paired brooches, weapons that were clearly made as a set. These burial patterns appear across the Viking world from Norway to Iceland to Norse settlements in Britain. One particularly moving example comes from a double burial in Iceland. Two male warriors buried side by side in the same grave pit, their arms positioned so their hands appear to touch. Grave goods include matching amber beads, unusual for male burials, and weapons that metal analysis shows were forged from the same piece of iron. Someone commissioned matched weapons for these men, and someone buried them together in a way that emphasized their connection, even in death. The domestic artifacts from Viking Age sites tell us about shared lives in other ways. Combs, for instance, were personal items, often decorated elaborately. We find pairs of combs matching in design, in context suggesting they belonged to paired warriors. Same with drinking horns, belt buckles, and other personal effects. These weren't mass-produced items. They were commissioned pieces made as sets intended to signal connection. The farms themselves show patterns of joint occupation. Some longhouses have been excavated that show evidence of two distinct family lines managing the property together over multiple generations. The inheritance patterns traced through grave goods and legal documents suggest sworn brothers establishing households that functioned exactly like married couples' households. Joint property, joint decision-making, shared resources. Daily religious practice in Norse society involved household rituals, and sworn brothers participated in these together. The sagas mention companions making offerings together, swearing oaths together at sacred sites, and being buried with matching religious symbols. This wasn't just sharing a roof. It was sharing a life in every meaningful sense. Food culture provides another window into these relationships. The sagas frequently mention companions sharing food from the same plate or drinking from the same horn. In Norse culture, sharing food was deeply symbolic. It created bonds of obligation and closeness. When warriors are described as sharing one table, it signified a household partnership, not just friendly dining. The evidence suggests that these relationships were woven into the fabric of daily life so thoroughly that they weren't remarkable. They didn't require explanation or defense. They simply were accepted, recognized, legally protected, and socially integrated into community life. Chapter 4. What the Sagas Whispered. The Icelandic Sagas, written down in the 13th century but preserving oral traditions from centuries earlier, are absolutely packed with these relationships once you know how to read them. Victorian translators, bless them, did their absolute best to make these stories conform to 19th century sensibilities. They failed rather spectacularly, and the original Old Norse texts have been waiting patiently for us to catch up. The Saga of Grettir. The Strong describes the main hero's relationship with his companion, Illugi, in language that's remarkably tender. When they meet, Grettir is an outlaw, feared and isolated. Illugi, a young warrior of good family, seeks him out specifically to offer companionship. The saga describes their first meeting with language typically reserved for romantic encounters in Norse poetry, emphasis on physical appearance, immediate deep recognition, the sense of fate bringing them together. Illugi's father warns him against going to Grettir, saying, "You will find there a love that will lead to your death." That phrase, "a love that will lead to your death," appears in Norse poetry in contexts that are clearly romantic. The saga makes no effort to clarify or soften this language. It simply presents it as the father's understanding of what his son is choosing. When Grettir and Illugi establish their partnership, they swear oaths to never part. The saga describes them as sharing one bed and being as close as if they were one person. They live together in Grettir's hideout, sharing everything, described as never being separated by more than speaking distance. When danger comes, Illugi insists on facing it with Grettir rather than seeking safety. The end of their story is heartbreaking. When Grettir is finally killed, Illugi has the chance to escape. He refuses, choosing instead to die beside his companion. His last words preserved in the saga are, "I swore I would never leave him, and I will keep that oath." Then he dies fighting, and the saga records that their bodies were found lying together as they had lived. The saga of Gisli describes a warrior whose sworn brother is killed. Gisli's grief is described with intensity that exceeds anything else in the saga, including his reactions to the deaths of blood relatives. He dreams of his dead companion every night, describing these dreams with longing that's absolutely explicit in the original Old Norse. In one dream sequence, the companion appears, and Gisli describes wanting to hold him and never let go. The saga presents this without comment, as if such emotional intensity between male warriors was entirely expected. Njal's saga includes the relationship between Kari and Gunnar described as loving each other more than brothers. When Gunnar faces death, Kari offers to die with him. Gunnar refuses, but only after a conversation that the saga describes as speaking words of love to each other such as men rarely speak. That phrase, "words of love such as men rarely speak," appears elsewhere in Norse literature to describe the most close conversations between lovers. The saga of the sworn brothers, Fossbredra saga, is perhaps the most explicit. It tells the story of Thorgir and Thormodar, who establish sworn brotherhood and are described throughout as being utterly devoted to each other. When Thorgir is killed, Thormodar's grief is the center of the remaining saga. He composes love poetry for Thorgir using verse forms typically reserved for romantic loss. The saga records this poetry in full, making no attempt to reframe it as anything other than what it is. One of Thormodur's verses translates roughly as, "I wake in loneliness, remembering his warmth beside me. No woman could fill the emptiness where he was. My heart is in the earth with him." This isn't subtle poetry. It's a straightforward expression of romantic loss preserved in a saga that was copied and recopied for centuries without anyone feeling the need to edit it out. The sagas occasionally describe the community's reaction to these relationships, and it's telling. Sometimes there's teasing, gentle mockery of how inseparable two warriors are, jokes about their devotion to each other, but it's the same teasing directed at any obviously devoted couple. There's no moral judgment, no suggestion that these relationships are inappropriate or shameful. What's remarkable is how thoroughly Victorian translators worked to hide these relationships. Early English translations changed pronouns, split passionate declarations between multiple characters, added explanatory notes suggesting these were just very good friends, and in some cases simply left out the most explicit passages. We're only now getting translations that present the sagas as they were actually written, and they're revealing a culture far more comfortable with male-male love than anyone previously admitted. Chapter 5. The Archaeology of Affection. Physical evidence for these relationships exists beyond runestones and sagas. The archaeology of Viking Age burials, settlements, and personal artifacts paints a picture of close warrior bonds that were materially expressed and socially recognized. Double burials of adult males appear throughout the Viking world with enough frequency that they can't be dismissed as coincidence. These aren't battle casualties thrown into a pit together. They're carefully arranged burials with significant grave goods positioned to suggest relationship in death, arms arranged to touch, heads turned toward each other, weapons positioned to overlap or mirror each other. A burial in Norway, excavated in the 1980s, contains 2 male warriors buried with extraordinary care. The grave pit was large enough to accommodate both bodies comfortably, suggesting it was specifically dug for 2. The bodies are positioned side by side, their right hands touching. Each man was buried with his weapons, but they were arranged symmetrically, matching swords on the outside, matching spears crossed above their heads, matched shields positioned to meet in the middle. The grave goods included matching sets of game pieces. The Vikings loved board games, and finding matched sets in a double burial suggests shared leisure time, shared interests, a life lived in companionship. There were also matching dress pins, which is unusual for male burials, but makes sense if we understand these as gifts exchanged between partners. DNA analysis of double burials has revealed that most aren't blood relatives. They're not brothers in the family sense. They're unrelated males buried together with all the care and expense that Viking culture reserved for spouses and immediate family. The positioning, the grave goods, the effort involved in these burials all suggest that someone, probably the surviving community, wanted to acknowledge these relationships in death. Runestone pairs offer another form of material evidence. In several locations across Sweden, we find matched runestones built side by side, commissioned by the same person for 2 different deceased warriors. The stones use similar language, similar decorative designs, and are positioned to be read together. One example in Upland describes 2 warriors as both dear to me, both lost to me, both remembered in stone. Personal artifacts tell close stories. Rings and arm rings were important status symbols in Viking culture, often given as rewards for service or tokens of alliance. But we also find matching rings in burial contexts, suggesting something more personal. One pair of silver arm rings found in separate but nearby burials bear the same inscription in runes, always together. Chemical analysis shows they were made from the same source silver, deliberately crafted as a matched pair. Combs, as I mentioned earlier, were personal items that Vikings used daily. Some combs found in burials have runic inscriptions, personal messages, names, or protective charms. In one remarkable case, a comb found in Sweden bears an inscription that translates as "For him who holds my heart." It was found in a male warrior's burial, placed near his head, suggesting it was a treasured possession. Textile evidence, though rare to find preserved, occasionally survives in favorable burial conditions. Some warrior burials show evidence of clothing or textiles that were clearly gifts, elaborate weaving, expensive dyes, quality far beyond what the buried individual could have afforded or produced themselves. These were love tokens, gifts given to mark affection and partnership. The layout of settlements offers evidence as well. Some excavated farmsteads show building patterns consistent with partnered households, paired sleeping areas, shared storage, domestic arrangements that mirror married couples' households. Legal documents occasionally reference property held jointly by sworn brothers, managed together, passed down through adoption or to surviving partners. Workshop areas at some settlements show evidence of paired craftsmen working together over long periods. Metalworking, shipbuilding, weapon forging. These skilled trades often involved partnerships, and the archaeological evidence suggests some of these partnerships were the same sworn brotherhoods described in Sagas. Ships, which were sometimes used as burial chambers for high-status individuals, occasionally contained double burials. Oseberg ship burial in Norway, while containing 2 women, established the pattern of paired burials in ships, and similar male pairs have been found in ship burials across Scandinavia. These were expensive, prestigious burials requiring significant community resources. That they were used for paired warriors tells us something about how these relationships were valued. Chapter 6. Legacy in Stone and Hearts. The Viking Age ended roughly around 1050 CE as Scandinavia converted to Christianity and integrated into broader European culture. The conversion process was gradual and complex, but one of its effects was a shift in how close same-sex relationships were understood and expressed. The early Christian period in Scandinavia shows continuity with earlier practices. Runestones from the 11th century still remember sworn brothers using affectionate language, though Christian symbols like crosses now accompany the Norse decorative designs. Some stones include both Christian prayers and distinctly Norse expressions of affection, suggesting a transitional period where old and new coexisted. But gradually, the social space for these relationships got smaller. Christian law, imported from continental Europe, didn't recognize sworn brotherhood the way Norse law had. The legal frameworks that had protected these partnerships dissolved. The ceremonies, the public recognition, the inheritance rights, they disappeared over a few generations. Interestingly, the runestones remained. They stood in fields and along roads, their messages preserved in stone even as the culture that created them transformed. For centuries, they were read as memorial stones. Their deeper meanings were forgotten or deliberately misread. The language markers that encoded same-sex love became unclear as Old Norse evolved into modern Scandinavian languages. Victorian-era scholars documented these stones extensively, photographing and recording them with admirable thoroughness. They translated the runes, published their findings, and built impressive academic careers on Viking Age studies. And they completely missed or deliberately hid what the stones were actually saying about love and relationships. It's only in recent decades, as language study and archaeology have become more sophisticated, and as our culture has become more accepting of same-sex relationships, that scholars have gone back to these stones with fresh eyes. What they're finding is changing our understanding of Viking Age society. The implications extend beyond academic interest. These runestones, these sagas, these carefully arranged burials, they're evidence that the idea of same-sex love being a modern thing is nonsense. It's always existed in every culture in every time period. What changes is whether societies acknowledge it, accept it, and create space for it. The Vikings, for all their reputation for violence, apparently understood something that many later cultures forgot. Love is love, regardless of the genders involved. They created legal frameworks to protect it, social rituals to celebrate it, and language to express it. Then they carved it into stone so it would last forever. The modern descendants of these Vikings are now reclaiming this history. LGBTQ+ organizations in Scandinavia have embraced the runestones and sagas as evidence of historical acceptance. Pride events in Sweden and Norway sometimes feature runestone imagery. The past is being used to argue for acceptance in the present. Some of the runestones have become informal pilgrimage sites. The Oklunda stone, once standing unregarded in a field, now has a small path worn to it by visitors. People leave offerings, flowers, coins, small stones at its base. Wedding parties sometimes visit to have photos taken beside it. It's become a symbol of love that transcends time. Museums across Scandinavia are updating their Viking Age exhibits to reflect new understanding of these relationships. Where displays once described warriors and their comrades, they now acknowledge warriors and their partners. It's a small change in language, but it represents a significant shift in interpretation. The academic community is still processing the implications. Each year brings new papers analyzing runestones, reinterpreting sagas, and excavating burials with fresh understanding. The field of Viking studies is being transformed by the recognition that same-sex relationships weren't shameful secrets. They were integrated into society in ways we're only beginning to fully appreciate. For the LGBTQ+ community, particularly for gay and bisexual men, these discoveries matter deeply. They provide historical precedent, evidence that same-sex love isn't a modern thing, but a human constant. They offer ancestors, heroes, warriors who loved as they love, lived openly, and were honored by their communities. The runestones stand as they have for over a millennium, weathered by time, but enduring. The messages carved into them, declarations of love, expressions of grief, promises of eternal memory, remain readable to anyone who knows how to read them. They're time capsules from a culture that made space for love in all its forms, carved into stone by people who understood that some things are worth preserving forever. As our journey through the hidden love letters of Viking warriors concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always interesting tapestry woven with human cleverness, strength, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. Until our next archaeological adventure together, this is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the remarkable tapestry of human history. But, for now, stay tuned as we have a bonus story coming right up, read especially for you by our guest narrator.
Thank you for having me. Our next sleep story is entitled The Queens Who Ran Genghis Khan's Empire and Kept the Receipts. I hope you like it. All right, settle in. Let's talk about the Mongol Empire. When you picture it, what comes to mind? Probably a guy on a horse. A seriously tough-looking guy, maybe with a magnificent mustache and a bow, gazing sternly over a vast conquered landscape. He's the face of the brand. CEO of Conquest, the 13th century leader. We've all seen the movies. We've read the books. It's a story of men, Genghis Khan and his army of rugged, Unstoppable warriors thundering across the Eurasian steppe, building the largest connected land empire in the history of the world. It's a tale of testosterone, of raw male power, a world run by guys who probably thought a balanced diet was mutton in the left hand and fermented horse's milk in the right. This image is so powerful, so baked into our collective historical consciousness, that we just accept it. Of course, it was men. Who else would have the time between all the conquering and pillaging to actually run the place? It's a neat, simple story. A story that fits on a movie poster. It implies that while the men were out doing the important world-changing work of rearranging borders with extreme prejudice, the women were, well, somewhere in the background, presumably being quiet and making sure the tents didn't blow away. It's a historical story that feels familiar, comfortable, and has been the default setting for centuries. And it's a complete and utter fantasy. Tonight, you are not one of those men on a horse. You are not Temujin, the boy who would become the great Khan. You are something far more crucial, more complex, and in many ways, more powerful. Tonight, you are a Khatun, a queen of the steppe. The year is somewhere in the late 12th century, and the world you know is a vast windswept grassland under an endless sky. About to become the chief operating officer of the most explosive startup in human history, the Mongol Empire. You were not in the background. You were the entire administrative state. Were the logistical genius, the diplomatic anchor, and the unwavering center of power that made the whole bloody enterprise possible. The men were the feared instruments of expansion. You were the state itself. The proof, the receipts, as they say, are scattered across the historical record, often hiding in plain sight. For example, a simple golden tablet, no bigger than your hand, known as a paisa. Archaeologists have found these, and they are, for all intents and purposes, the 13th century equivalent of a diplomatic passport, an unlimited corporate credit card, and a get-out-of-jail-free card, all rolled into one. Anyone carrying it was to be given food, lodging, fresh horses, and unconditional passage. They spoke with the authority of the great Khan himself. And here is the kicker. We have letters and historical accounts from European friars to Persian viziers, describing these paisas being issued not by some grizzled warrior, but by you, by a Khatun, a regent empress bearing her own seal, her own authority. This small inscribed piece of metal is not just an artifact. It's a formal declaration that the woman who issued it held the keys to the kingdom. It's the undeniable physical proof that when it came to running the Mongol Empire, it was very often a woman's world. This discovery, and others like it from across the vast Mongol territories, reveals something extraordinary about power, gender, and governance in the medieval world. We settle in tonight. We're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of the people who lived on the unforgiving Mongolian steppe. Now, dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about the Mongol Empire. Let's begin. Before all of that, before the empire, before the title of Khatun meant ruler of a quarter of the world, let's begin with the wind. The first thing you are aware of, always, is the wind. It's not just a breeze. It's a physical presence. It scours the land, flattening the grass in waves that make the steppe look like a green ocean. It carries the scent of wild onions, crushed thyme, and the rich animal smell of your family's herds. It whispers and howls and moans, a constant, ageless soundtrack to your life. Right now, it's pulling at the felt flaps of your home, a circular tent you call a jur. You are young, perhaps 16 or 17, and your world is defined by this portable felt and wood home, the livestock that surrounds it, and the vast, intimidating sky that domes over it all. Your hands are rough. They are never not busy. From the moment the sun bleeds across the eastern horizon to long after it has vanished in the west, your hands are working. Today, you are making felt. It's a process that is as fundamental to your existence as breathing. You and the other women of your camp have sheared the sheep. Their protests, a familiar bleating chorus. Now you're beating the wool with a pair of long, thin wands. The motion is rhythmic, hypnotic. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The air fills with the dusty lanolin smell of the wool, and the fine particles that catch in the sunlight slanting through the smoke hole at the top of the jur. This felt will become a new wall for a jur, a winter blanket, boots, a saddle pad. It is your shelter, your warmth, your armor against a world that is not particularly interested in your survival. Life here is a series of practical, unceasing calculations. You do not think in terms of weeks or months, but in seasons and in the cycles of the animals. You know the exact moment when the marmots are fattest for hunting. You can read the clouds to predict a coming hailstorm that could shatter a flock. You know which of the horses is the most reliable, which of the cows is about to calve, and which patch of grazing land is nearing exhaustion. This is not domestic work in the way a settled person would understand it. This is economics, is logistics. You are the manager of the family's entire wealth, which is not measured in coins, but in hooves and heartbeats. The men might be responsible for guarding the herd from wolves or rival clans, but you are responsible for its health, its growth, and its transformation into the things that keep you all alive. Food, clothing, shelter. Your senses are tuned to this reality. You can tell by the sound of a horse's hooves if the ground is too damp. You can smell the coming rain on the wind long before it arrives. Your eyes are accustomed to scanning the horizon, not for beauty, but for threats. A distant dust cloud could mean migrating gazelle, which is good. It could also mean a raiding party, which is very, very bad. Life is precarious. A tightrope walk between abundance and starvation, peace and violence. The death rate for children is brutally high. A harsh winter can wipe out your entire herd or entire fortune. This constant low-level hum of existential dread is just part of the background noise. Like the wind, you don't dwell on it. Work. You are not considered weak or delicate. That idea would be laughed out of the jur. You can ride a horse as well as any man, not for sport, but for necessity. You can break down and set up this entire household in a matter of hours. You can butcher a sheep with practiced efficiency and use every single part of it, from the meat for stew to the entrails for sinew, the bones for tools. You have a voice in family matters, and your opinion is respected, not because of some abstract principle of equality, but because you are competent. Your survival and the survival of your family depends on your skill. To ignore your counsel would be, quite simply, foolish. Tonight, a young man from another clan is visiting. His name is Temujin. He's the son of a minor chief, a man your father made a blood pact with years ago. There's an arrangement, a betrothal. You study him from across the fire. He's not imposing, not yet. He's intense, with eyes that seem to see everything. He's quiet, but there's a coiled energy about him. You are to be his wife. This is a political and economic alliance, a merging of herds and family ties. But it is also personal. Your life is about to be tied to his. You will leave your family's camp and join his. You will be the senior wife, the mistress of his household. It's a moment of immense transition, a step into the unknown. Feel a knot of apprehension and perhaps a flicker of something else. Ambition, curiosity. You look at this intense young man and wonder what future he will build. You don't know it yet, but you're not just marrying a man. You are about to become the CEO founder of an empire. And the skills you've learned here, managing the herds, making the felt, reading the weather and the hearts of people, are the very skills that will be needed to run it. The world thinks of history as being made on the battlefield, but you know the truth. It begins here, in the jur, with the rhythmic thwack of a wool beater and a clear, calculating eye on the horizon. But that horizon holds more than just a change in weather. A different kind of storm is brewing, one that will test your resilience in ways you cannot possibly imagine. The wedding is simple, a practical affair of the steppe. Family gives Temujin a fine black sable coat as a dowry gift, a symbol of wealth and prestige. You travel to his camp, a small collection of jurs nestled in a river valley, and begin your new life. You are Bort. Your world has now narrowed and expanded all at once. It is narrowed to this single man, his family, his small clutch of followers. It has expanded because his fate is now yours, and his ambitions are slowly starting to burn brighter. You take over the management of his household with the same quiet competence you have always possessed. You organize the camp, direct the other women, the food stores, and begin to weave the social fabric that turns a group of individuals into a cohesive unit. Your life settles into a new rhythm, but the ever-present precarity of the steppe has not gone away. And one morning, it arrives. It comes not as a storm or a wolf, but as a thunder of hooves. A raiding party from the Merkit tribe, old enemies of Temujin's family, descends upon your unprepared camp. In the chaos, you are seized. You are thrown onto a horse and carried away, a prize of war, a pawn in a game of clan vengeance. The world becomes a blur of motion. The smell of a sweaty horse, the rough grip of your captor. You are terrified, but a cold, hard kernel of resolve forms within you. This is not the end. You are not merely a victim. You are Bata of the Oklunda tribe of Temujin, and you will endure. You are held captive for months. It is a grim, certain time. You are treated as property, a spoil of a raid. But you observe, you listen, you learn the weaknesses and strengths of your captors. You never let them see your fear. You maintain your dignity with a ferocity that puzzles them. You are, in essence, gathering intelligence. Meanwhile, Temujin is a man possessed. The abduction of his wife is not just a personal tragedy. It is a profound public humiliation. To reclaim you is to reclaim his honor, his standing as a leader. He forges alliances he might not have otherwise sought, calling in favors, promising future rewards. Rallies his small band of followers, and with the help of his powerful blood brother,
Jamuka,
and his father's old ally, Togrul Khan, he amasses an army. The raid to rescue you is swift and brutal. In the ensuing battle, you are found and brought back to Temujin. The reunion is fraught. So much has happened. You are pregnant, and the child's paternity is uncertain. A fact that will follow your son, Jochi, for his entire life. But Temujin accepts you back without question, and he accepts the child as his own. This single act sends a powerful message to all his followers. Loyalty is absolute. He protects his own. And in doing so, his bond with you is forged into something far stronger than a simple marriage alliance. It becomes a true partnership. You have faced the worst the steppe can throw at you, and you have both survived. You are no longer just his wife, or his first and most trusted advisor, the rock upon which he will build his future. This event is the catalyst. It transforms Temujin from a minor noble into a leader of consequence. And your role transforms with him. When he holds council, you are there, not serving drinks, but sitting with the men, listening to the debates. And when you speak, they listen. Your voice is not loud, is clear and steady. You have an uncanny ability to judge character. You can see the ambition in one man's eyes, the loyalty in another's, the treachery hiding behind a third smile. You warn Temujin of Jamuka's growing jealousy. You encourage him to reward loyalty lavishly, to be ruthless with betrayal. You are the quiet architect of his social and political strategy. As his power grows, so do your responsibilities. His followers swell from a few families into a horde. The camp becomes a moving city, and you are its mayor, its quartermaster, its chief administrator. You oversee the distribution of food, the care of the wounded, the allocation of spoils from battle. You manage the vast network of wives and children, settling disputes, forging alliances through the marriages of your own children. This mobile court, the Ordo, is your domain. While Temujin is away on campaign, sometimes for months or even years at a time, you are the fixed point of power. You are the regent in all but name. Ambassadors from other tribes don't just seek out Temujin on the battlefield. They come to your Ordo to negotiate. You receive them, entertain them, and assess them, sending detailed reports to your husband via a network of messengers. You are creating the blueprint for how the future empire will be run. It's a system based on your own pragmatic, no-nonsense approach to household management, but scaled up to a terrifying degree. Imagine running a multinational corporation where the entire infrastructure has to be packed up and moved every few months. The logistics are staggering. You have to organize the migration of tens of thousands of people and hundreds of thousands of animals across vast distances. You must ensure that every person has a role, that every family is provided for. You are essentially inventing a mobile government from scratch. The men are the sharp edge of the sword, but you are the hand that wields it, the mind that directs its purpose. You understand something fundamental. An army can win a battle, but it takes an organized society to win a war and build a nation. What you are building in your camp is the nation, and without it, Temujin's military genius would be for nothing. He would be just another raider, his victories fading like his campfires. You are ensuring his legacy. But with this new power comes a new set of dangers. Not from rival clans, but from within his own family. The question of succession is already looming, and the seeds of a future conflict are being sown right here in the heart of your own Jur. The year is now 1206. You stand on a vast plain near the Onon River. The air is electric with the energy of thousands of people. A great Kurultai, a grand assembly of all the Mongol tribes, has been called. And today, they raise your husband, Temujin, on a great white felt sheet, proclaiming him the supreme ruler of all the peoples of the steppe. They give him a new name, Genghis Khan. And in that same moment, you become the Grand Empress, the Khatun of a newly born empire. This isn't a moment of quiet reflection for you. It's the culmination of decades of your labor, your strategy, your resilience. The world sees the man on the felt sheet. You see the intricate web of alliances you helped weave, the logistical machine you built, the family you held together. As the empire explodes outwards, your role becomes even more critical. Genghis Khan is almost perpetually on campaign. He's in northern China, then he's sweeping into Central Asia, then pushing toward Persia. These campaigns last for years. He is an absentee emperor. In his absence, who rules? You do. Mongolia, the heartland of the empire, and you are its heart. Along with your senior daughters-in-law, command the imperial household, the Ordos. These are no longer just large camps. They are the mobile capitals of the empire. Each major wife of the Khan has her own Ordo, her own lands, her own herds, her own staff of officials and soldiers. You command the largest of these, the Great Ordo, the de facto center of government. Your days are a relentless sequence of administrative tasks. Messengers from the Yam, the Mongol Pony Express system, arrive constantly. They bring reports from generals 1,000 miles away, tribute from conquered cities, requests for rulings on legal disputes. You have to read them, digest them, and act. A famine has broken out in a newly acquired province. You must organize and dispatch grain shipments. A dispute has arisen between two generals over the division of plunder. Must mediate, sending a ruling that is firm but fair, so as not to create a lasting feud. Vassal king is late with his tribute. You dispatch an envoy with a message that is polite on the surface but carries the unmistakable threat of imperial displeasure. It's the 13th century version of running a global empire from a remote, constantly moving office. You are signing off on troop movements, approving trade agreements, and appointing regional governors, all while ensuring the day-to-day life of your own massive household continues to function flawlessly. Let's talk about the sheer wealth flowing into your hands. The empire is a colossal extraction machine. From China comes silk in quantities that beggar belief. You have so much of it that it ceases to be a luxury item and becomes a kind of currency. You use it to pay soldiers, to reward loyal officials, to wrap your jurs in. From Persia comes gold, silver, intricate metalwork, and scholars. From the forests of Siberia come furs, sable, mink, fox, piled so high they look like small mountains. You are the controller of this immense treasury. You decide how it is stored, how it is cataloged, and how it is distributed. The archaeological record gives us a glimpse of this. In the graves of high-ranking Mongol women from this period, archaeologists find objects from all corners of the known world. Chinese porcelain, Persian glass, Venetian beads. These women were not just passive recipients of their husbands' plunder. Their graves are the material record of their own economic and diplomatic power. The stunningly intricate golden headdresses, the bokta that you wear, are not just fashion. They are towering symbols of your status, so tall you have to enter a jur by stooping sideways. They are a declaration of power, visible from 100 paces. You are also a diplomat. When foreign envoys arrive, they often come to you first. A Persian vizier, a Chinese scholar, a Russian prince. They are brought to your ordo. They are probably expecting a brutal warlord, and instead, they find themselves in a highly organized, cosmopolitan court. Granted an audience with you, a calm, intelligent woman who asks them shrewd questions about the price of grain in their homeland or the political stability of their king. You can imagine their confusion and their dawning respect. You are the stable administrative face of an empire that presents a terrifyingly martial one to the outside world. But your most difficult job is managing your own family. Your 4 sons with Genghis, Jochi, Chagatai, Ogede, and Tolui are all powerful, ambitious men. They are also fierce rivals. The question of who will succeed their father is a constant source of tension. It threatens to tear the family and the empire apart. You are the only person they all respect, the only one who can mediate their disputes. You constantly work to soothe bruised egos, to remind them of their common purpose, to force them to cooperate. Genghis trusts your judgment on this above all others. He knows you are the glue holding the family together. He decrees that, after his death, the empire will be ruled by one of your sons, and one of your sons alone. Your lineage will be the imperial lineage. You have secured the future, but in doing so, you have also guaranteed that the next generation of power players, the ones who will inherit this vast enterprise, will include not just your sons, but your fiercely intelligent and capable daughters-in-law. You haven't just created an empire. You've established a dynasty where women will continue to wield immense, if often unacknowledged, power. The stage is set for a new kind of ruler. The years pass. The wind still scours the steppe, but now it blows over the heartland of a world empire. Genghis Khan is dead. And now the true test of the system you helped build begins. The empire, by law and custom, cannot be without a leader. But choosing a new great Khan is a complex process. A Kurultai must be called, and all the major princes of the blood, your sons and grandsons, must gather to elect a successor. This takes time. They are scattered across the empire, from the plains of Hungary to the shores of the China Sea. It could take months, even years, to assemble them. And in that power vacuum, the whole fragile enterprise could collapse into civil war. The empire needs a ruler. It needs a regent. And so we pivot. Are no longer Bort, the steady hand behind the throne. Now, you are Torjeen, widow of Ogedai Khan, Genghis's son, and chosen successor. Your husband has just died, reportedly after a monumental drinking binge, which, for a Mongol royal, is saying something. And now you are thrust into the center of the storm. The empire is officially leaderless. According to tradition, the most senior male relative should take over, but you have other ideas. Your husband's choice for a successor was his grandson, Shiramun. But you have a different candidate in mind. Your own son, Giuk. The problem is, Giuk is arrogant, unpopular, and not particularly competent. Most of the other princes can't stand him. But is your son. So you make a decision. You are not going to let some council of men decide the fate of the empire your family built. You are going to take control. You declare yourself the regent of the Mongol Empire. It's an audacious, unprecedented move. But you have spent your entire life in the corridors of power. You know where the levers are. You start by purging your husband's old ministers, men who were loyal to him, but not to you. You replace them with your own people, some of whom are, frankly, corrupt. But their defining characteristic is that they are loyal to you and your son. One of your most trusted advisors is a woman, Fatima, a Persian captive you raised from obscurity to a position of immense influence. This is scandalous to the old guard, but you don't care about their norms. You care about results. For 5 years, rule the largest empire on Earth. You are the Great Hatun, the Empress Regent. No major decision is made without your approval. Seal. Your tamga is affixed to official documents, giving them the force of law. You issue paises, those golden passports of authority, to your envoys. You manage the imperial treasury, command the armies, and conduct foreign policy. And it is during your reign that the empire has one of its most fascinating encounters with the West. Imagine your court. It's a sprawling city of jurs filled with people from every corner of the known world. One day, a new delegation arrives. They are pale, bearded men in rough brown robes, looking utterly bewildered. They are Franciscan friars sent by Pope Innocent IV from distant Europe. Their leader is a man named Giovanni da Pian del Carpini. They have traveled for over a year, a journey of incredible hardship, to deliver a message from their Pope to the Great Khan. They are brought into your presence. Picture the scene from their perspective. They have come to the court of the world's most feared conqueror, and they are brought before a woman, a formidable middle-aged woman sitting on a throne, surrounded by her advisors, holding the reins of global power. Their entire worldview, a world dominated by kings, emperors, and popes, is turned on its head. They present their letter from the Pope, which in a rather stunningly undiplomatic move, basically demands that the Mongols stop their conquering and convert to Christianity. You have the letter translated. Listen patiently. Then you dictate a reply. Your letter, which was preserved in the Vatican archives, is a masterpiece of imperial swagger. You don't just reject the Pope's demands. You scold him. You, Torjin Khatun, speaking with the authority of the eternal sky, essentially tell the most powerful man in Christendom that he has no right to make such demands. You inform him that if he wants peace, he and all the kings of Europe must come to your court in person and submit to Mongol rule. It is a stunning display of absolute confidence and power. and it was written and sent by you, the Regent Empress. You finally achieve your goal. You maneuver, bribe, and bully the other princes into a Kurultai. And after 5 years of your iron-fisted rule, they elect your son, Gyuk. You have won. You have placed your child on the throne. It is the pinnacle of your power, but it is a victory that comes at a great cost. Your methods have created deep resentments. You have alienated powerful factions within the royal family. You may have secured the throne for your son, but you have also badly weakened the unity that Genghis and Borte worked so hard to build. The cracks are beginning to show in the foundation of the empire. Your regency was a demonstration of the incredible power a Mongol woman could wield. But it was also a warning that personal ambition, even a mother's ambition for her son, could threaten the stability of the entire world. And as you fade from the historical record shortly after Gyuk's ascension, you leave behind a legacy that is both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling, a testament to a will that reshaped an empire. Your story as Torjin is a dramatic peak, but the influence of the Khatun's did not end with you. The pattern repeats. When Gyuk dies after a short and ineffective reign, Widow Ogul Kaimish becomes regent. When the great Kublai Khan is establishing his Yuan dynasty in China, his wife, Chabi, is his most essential advisor. She is a patron of the arts, a savvy economist who champions the use of paper money, and a shrewd political operator who helps him navigate the complex culture of his new Chinese subjects. The power of the imperial women is not an anomaly. It is a structural feature of the Mongol Empire, a legacy stretching all the way back to Borte. So, let's step back into that original Chur, back on the windswept steppe. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and simmering mutton stew. You are once again that young woman. Your hands calloused from work, your eyes constantly scanning the horizon. You could not have known what was to come. You could not have imagined that your children and grandchildren would rule from Beijing to Baghdad, from Moscow to the Persian Gulf. You were focused on the immediate, tangible tasks of survival. But the skills you perfected here were the very foundation of that future. Your understanding of logistics, of managing resources and people, was the blueprint for imperial administration. Your role as the stable center of the family, the mediator and counselor, became the model for the political function of the Khatun's. The empire's expansion was explosive, violent, and world-altering, driven by the military genius of its khans. But endurance, its ability to govern, to cohere, was due in no small part to the quiet, constant, and deeply pragmatic labor of its women. While the men were conquering the world, you were running it. Understood that an empire is not just a territory marked on a map. It is a system. It is a network of people, a flow of goods, a structure of laws and customs. It is a household scaled up to an almost unimaginable degree. And you were the master of the house. Archaeology gives us tantalizing glimpses a Khatun's tomb is unearthed. And inside, amidst the golden artifacts and silk robes, they find a set of tools for leatherworking, or a simple spindle whorl for making thread. It's a poignant reminder of where this all began. These empresses who corresponded with popes and commanded nations never lost the practical skills of their nomadic origins. It's a beautiful kind of balance. One day you're dictating a letter that will make a European king tremble. The next, you're ensuring the felt on the chair is properly waterproofed for the coming winter. The profound and the mundane, side by side. This story forces us to reconsider what we mean by power. History so often equates power with the sword, with the man on the horse. We are drawn to the dramatic narratives of conquest, but there is another kind of power, a foundational power that is quieter but no less potent. It is the power of administration, of diplomacy, social cohesion. It is the power to make the whole thing work. The Mongol men were peerless in their ability to take things apart, cities, kingdoms, armies. But it was the Mongol women who knew how to put things together, and more importantly, how to hold them together. They were the architects and managers of the Pax Mongolica, the century of relative peace and stability that their husbands' conquests, ironically, created. They fostered trade, they patronized arts and sciences, and they managed the vast multicultural, multi-religious state with a level of pragmatism their warrior husbands sometimes lacked. So as you drift off, think of that endless steppe under that vast starry sky. Think of the sound of the wind whipping around a warm, firelit gur. Picture yourself not as a conqueror, but as an administrator, a manager, a queen. Your work is not glorious in the way a battle is glorious. There will be few epic poems written about your skillful management of the imperial treasury, or your deft handling of a succession crisis. Your power is less visible, but it is everywhere. It is in the well-fed horses of the Yam messenger system, in the tribute that flows smoothly from a distant province, in the peace that is kept between your ambitious sons. It is the power that turns a fleeting conquest into a lasting empire. The men may have made the noise, but you, the Khatun, made the history, and you never needed a sword to do it. As our journey through the world of the Mongol Khatuns concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Our next sleep story is entitled, Historians Got It Wrong. Why Your Ancestors Never Slept Through the Night. I hope you like it. Let's talk about sleep. Specifically that perfect, pristine 8-hour block of uninterrupted slumber that we've all been chasing our entire adult lives. It's the holy grail of modern existence, isn't it? The one productivity hack to rule them all. We buy blackout curtains, white noise machines, and mattresses that cost more than a used car, all in pursuit of this mythical 8-hour marathon. We treat waking up at 3 a.m. as a personal failure, a sign that our wiring is faulty. We lie there, staring at the ceiling, mentally berating ourselves for not being able to do the one thing a literal rock can do. Lie still and do nothing for a third of the day. This entire modern obsession, this relentless anxiety-fueled quest for a single consolidated chunk of sleep, is built on a fascinating and completely flawed assumption. The assumption is that this is the natural, biologically correct way for humans to rest. Imagine our ancestors, after a hard day of, well, ancestoring, collapsing onto a pile of straw and being dead to the world until the rooster, or perhaps a marauding Viking, woke them up. We see our own segmented, restless nights as a problem of modernity, a symptom of stress and glowing screens. But what if I told you that your 3 a.m. stare at the ceiling session isn't a bug? What if it's a feature, a ghostly echo of a sleep pattern that was the norm for almost all of human history? What if your inability to sleep for 8 hours straight doesn't make you a dysfunctional modern mess, but actually makes you historically accurate? The monolithic 8-hour sleep was a lie. Tonight, you are a farmer in the English countryside, somewhere around the year 1350. Your name doesn't much matter. It's probably something solid and earthy like John or William. Is shared by half the men in your village anyway. You live in a small, smoky, one-room cottage with a thatched roof, walls made of wattle and daub, which is a fancy way of saying woven sticks slathered in mud, dung, clay. And you share this cozy space with your wife, a few of your children who've survived infancy, and on particularly cold nights, a prized sheep or a couple of chickens. You don't have a clock. You don't have a calendar in the modern sense. Your entire existence is governed by two things: the sun and the seasons. And you have never, not once in your life, slept for 8 hours straight. It would be as alien a concept to you as a smartphone or a 401k. You sleep twice every night. The proof of your life, the receipts that historians finally uncovered, aren't buried treasures or golden artifacts. They're far more intimate. They are found in the faded ink of old diaries, in the dry records of court proceedings, in forgotten medical texts, and even in the lines of great literature. For centuries, these clues were hiding in plain sight. Doctors in the 16th century wrote prescriptions for potions to be taken not before bed, but specifically after the first sleep. A character in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales wakes up after his first sleep and gets on with his evening. Legal depositions from witnesses describe events that happened in the hour or two when the whole village was awake about in the dead of night. Historian A. Roger Eckert spent years compiling these fragments, these hundreds of scattered references, until a clear picture emerged. It wasn't an anomaly. It was the system. These texts are the archaeological evidence, the undeniable proof that for millennia, humanity slept in two distinct phases, separated by a strange, quiet, and magical period of wakefulness in the heart of the night. Discovery, made not with a trowel and brush, but through painstaking archival research, reveals something extraordinary about the history of night itself. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what historians found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in 14th century England. Now, dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about sleep. He begins not with an alarm, but with a subtle shift in the quality of the darkness. The deep, oppressive black of true night softens to a charcoal gray. You can't see the sun yet, but you can feel its approach. The air changes. The rooster, that feathered tyrant who serves as the village's official timekeeper, has already been clearing his throat for a bit. Don't so much wake up as you are summoned back to consciousness by the cold. It's a damp, penetrating chill that seems to emanate from the very earth beneath you. Your bed is a simple straw-stuffed pallet on the floor, maybe slightly raised on a low wooden frame if you're doing well for yourself. The straw has been compressed over months into something with the approximate comfort of a bag of gravel. It smells faintly of sweat, earth, and mouse. You share this bed with your wife, and probably your youngest child, a chaotic tangle of limbs in the dark. Personal space is a luxury you've never even conceived of. You sit up. Your back aches, not the dull ache of a bad office chair, but the deep, profound ache of relentless physical labor. Yesterday you spent 10 hours in the fields, bent over scything hay under the summer sun. The day before that it was repairing a fence. Tomorrow it might be helping to rethatch a neighbor's roof. Every day is a full-body workout with no recovery days. Your body is a tool, and like any well-used tool, it's dented and worn. You are probably somewhere in your late 30s, which by the standards of your time means you're solidly middle-aged. You've lost a few teeth to decay. Your joints click and pop like a crackling fire, and you have a web of fine lines around your eyes from squinting at the sun. You pawn your clothes. They are simple, woolen, and probably haven't been properly washed in months. There's your tunic, your rough trousers or brays, and some leather shoes if you're lucky. The fabric is scratchy and carries the permanent aroma of wood smoke. It clings to everything in your world. There's no morning coffee, no shower, no doom scrolling through bad news. Your morning routine is starkly functional. You stumble outside into the pre-dawn gloom. The air is fresh and cold, smelling of damp earth and manure. The village is slowly stirring. You hear the lowing of a cow, the bleating of a sheep, distant clang of the blacksmith, already at his forge. Your first task is to relieve yourself. There's no bathroom. Of course, just a designated spot behind the cottage, or a communal privy pit for the village. It's not glamorous, but it's efficient. Breakfast is whatever is available. Perhaps a chunk of dark, heavy rye bread so dense you could use it to block a door. And a bit of weak, watery ale. The water from the local stream isn't always safe, but the fermentation process for ale kills most of the nasty things that would otherwise have you spending the rest of the day regretting your life choices. This ale isn't for getting drunk. It's hydration. It's your medieval Gatorade, full of calories to fuel the hard day ahead. You eat quickly, standing, while your wife gets the fire going properly and checks on the children. Then it's out to the fields. You are a tenant farmer, a villein. This means you don't own your land. You work a few strips of land for your own family's sustenance, but you owe a significant portion of your week, often 3 or 4 days, to working the lord of the manor's land, the domain. This is your rent, your tax, your obligation, all paid in sweat. There is no climbing the corporate ladder. There is only the rhythm of the seasons, plowing in the spring, haymaking in the summer, harvesting in the fall, and surviving in the winter. Your life is a constant grinding battle against entropy. You are fighting to grow enough food to not starve, to raise enough livestock to have something to trade, to keep your family warm enough to make it through the winter. Sun is your taskmaster. You work from the moment it's light enough to see until it's too dark to continue. The work is communal. You are out in the fields with the other men of the village. There's a rhythm to it, a shared understanding forged by generations of the same labor on the same land. You don't talk much. There's no energy for idle chatter. The sounds, the swish of the scythe through the grass, the grunts of exertion, the jingle of a horse's harness, the shouts of the reeve. The Lord's overseer, who makes sure no one is slacking. Your world is small. You have likely never traveled more than 20 miles from the village where you were born. Your entire social circle, support system, and your rivals all live within shouting distance. You know everyone's business. You know who is a good worker, whose husband drinks too much, whose wife is a gossip, and whose cow gives the best milk. This is your world, contained within the sightlines of the parish church spire. As the sun reaches its zenith, you break for a midday meal. Your wife or one of your children brings it out to you in the field. It's more bread, perhaps a bit of hard cheese or a leek, and more ale. You find a patch of shade under a tree and eat slowly, feeling the ache in your muscles begin to set in. This is the only real break you'll get. The afternoon is a long, slow slog. The sun beating down on your neck. Your mind wanders. You think about the weather, a constant source of low-grade anxiety. Too much rain, and the crops will rot. Too little, and they'll wither. An early frost could wipe out a season's work. You think about the tithe you owe to the church. 1/10 of your harvest, and the rent you owe to the Lord. You do the quiet, desperate calculus of survival that occupies the minds of farmers everywhere, in every age. Finally, the sun begins its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The quality of the light changes, growing soft and golden. This is the signal. The reeve calls an end to the day's work. You gather your tools, your body screaming in protest, and begin the slow walk back to your cottage. The village is buzzing with a different kind of energy now. The smell of dozens of wood fires fills the air. Smoke hangs in a hazy layer over the thatched roofs. Children are running and shouting their chores for the day done. Women are calling to each other from their doorways. It's a moment of communal transition, the shift from work to rest. Back at your cottage, wife has a simple pottage simmering over the fire. It's a thick stew of whatever vegetables are in season. Peas, beans, onions, cabbage, boiled for hours with some grains to thicken it. Meat is a rare luxury reserved for feast days or special occasions. This pottage is the cornerstone of your diet. You eat it every day. Tonight, like most nights, it's fine. It's hot, it's filling, and it's there. You eat from a simple wooden bowl, using a spoon or a piece of bread to scoop it up. Forks haven't really caught on yet for common folk. The light outside is fading fast. Inside the cottage, the only illumination comes from the flickering hearth. It casts long, dancing shadows that make the small space seem both intimate and menacing. The world is shrinking down to the small circle of firelight. There are no books to read, no games to play, other than perhaps a simple board game scratched into a piece of wood. The main evening activity is talking. You might mend a tool. Your wife might be spinning wool with a drop spindle, but mostly you just sit. You talk about the day, the state of the crops, a bit of village gossip. You might tell your children a story, a folk tale about mischievous fairies or a cautionary Bible story you heard from the priest on Sunday. The darkness outside is now total. It's not the gentle, light-polluted darkness of the modern world. It is a profound, absolute, ink-black nothingness on a moonless, cloudy night. Literally cannot see your hand in front of your face. This darkness is not empty. It's alive. Your folklore and your faith have taught you that the night is full of spirits, demons, and things that are best left undisturbed. The forest at the edge of the village is a place of deep fear after sundown. To travel at night is to invite disaster, so you stay inside, in the small, smoky, firelit bubble of your home. It's your sanctuary against the vast, unknowable black. You don't stay up late. There's no reason to. Candles made of beeswax are an expensive luxury reserved for the church and the manor house. Tallow candles, made from animal fat, are cheaper, but they sputter, stink, and create a lot of smoke. Burning them is burning money. The most sensible thing to do when the world goes dark is to follow its lead. A profound, bone-deep weariness has settled over you. Body, having been pushed to its limits all day, is crying out for rest. And so, maybe an hour or two after the sun has fully set, you prepare for bed. There's no elaborate ritual. You might rinse your hands and face in a basin of cold water. You remove outer layers of clothing, leaving on a simple linen undertunic to sleep in. You bank the fire, covering the embers with ash so they will smolder through the night and can be easily rekindled in the morning. Then you and your family climb onto your shared straw pallet. You pull a coarse woolen blanket over yourselves, huddling together for warmth. The sounds, the crackle of the dying fire, the soft breathing of your children, the wind whistling through a crack in the daub, and the distant howl of a wolf. The day is over, but your night has only just begun. You close your eyes and drift into your first sleep. You sleep deeply for a few hours. This is the sleep of pure physical exhaustion. Your body is repairing itself. Your mind is processing the simple, repetitive inputs of the day. There are no complex anxieties to keep you awake, no existential dread about your career path. Your worries are immediate and tangible. Food, warmth, health. And for these first few hours, sleep is a welcome oblivion, a brief death that erases the aches and the toil. Sometime around what a modern person would call midnight, you stir. It's not a jarring awakening. It's a slow, gentle return to consciousness. You float up from the depths of sleep and find yourself awake. Your eyes open to the near-total darkness of the cottage. The fire is just a faint, dull red glow of embers in the hearth. The rest of your family is still sound asleep, are awake, and this is completely, utterly normal. You don't feel a jolt of panic. You don't think, oh no, I'm awake now. I'll never get back to sleep and I'll be a wreck tomorrow. Waking up in the middle of the night isn't a sign of a disorder. It's a scheduled and expected part of your schedule. This period of quiet wakefulness, known in your time as the watch, is not wasted time. It is, in many ways, one of the most important and versatile hours of your entire day. You lie still for a moment, listening. The world is silent in a way a modern person can't comprehend. There is no hum of a refrigerator, no drone of traffic, no distant sirens. The silence is so profound it feels like a presence in the room. You can hear the blood in your own ears. You can hear the whisper-soft sound of your wife's breathing beside you. You can hear the tiny scratching of a mouse somewhere in the thatch above. This quiet is a space for your mind to unfurl. During the day, mind is occupied with the physical demands of your labor. There is little time for introspection or deep thought. But now, in the stillness of the watch, your brain has the freedom to roam. This is your time for reflection. You might mull over a problem, how to fix that broken fence post, or the best way to deal with the blight on your pea plants. You might think about your spiritual life. This is considered a particularly potent time for prayer. The barrier between the physical and spiritual worlds is felt to be thinner at this hour. You might quietly recite the Lord's Prayer, thinking about your own sins and shortcomings, or praying for a good harvest, or for the health of your sickly child. The Church has told you that prayers said in the dead of night are especially effective. Sometimes this waking period is intensely practical. You might get up quietly. The floor is cold and rough beneath your bare feet. You move carefully, your body, knowing the layout of this small room by heart. You might step outside to urinate. The night air is shockingly cold on your skin. The stars, without any competing light, are a brilliant, shocking spectacle. They don't just twinkle. They blaze, a dense carpet of diamonds spilled across the black velvet of the sky. It is both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder of your own smallness in a vast, God-created cosmos. Back inside, you might add a small piece of wood to the embers, gently blowing them back to life to ward off the deepest of the night's chill. You might check on the animals if you have any sheltering inside, ensuring they are settled and safe. This is also a time for quiet, solitary work that can be done by the faint light of the fire. Your wife might use this hour for mending clothes, a task that requires little light and concentration. You might sharpen a tool or whittle a small wooden peg. These are not demanding tasks. They are meditative, a way to be productive in the quiet hours without disturbing the rest of the household. It's a peaceful, productive solitude that is impossible to find during the clamor of the day. But perhaps the most important function of the watch is social and intimate. It is the only time you and your wife are truly alone and awake together, with the world held at bay. The children are asleep. The village is silent. This is your time. You might turn to her in the darkness. Talk in low whispers. You share anxieties you wouldn't dare voice in the daylight. You speak of your hopes for your children, your fears about the coming winter. It is a time for connection, for reaffirming the bond that holds your small family unit together in a harsh world. And of course, this is a time for physical intimacy. Medical texts from your era, written by learned men who have studied the ancient Greeks, actually advise that this period between the two sleeps is the best time for procreation. The theory, based on the workings of the body's humors, is that after the first sleep you are more rested. Digestion of the evening meal is complete. The body is thought to be more potent. The chances of conception higher. Sex is not just for pleasure. It is a duty. It is the essential act of creating the next generation of hands to work the fields, to carry on your name, to care for you in your old age, if you're lucky enough to reach it. In the darkness of the cottage, this is an act of hope, a small defiance against the high rates of infant mortality and the brutal uncertainties of life. It's a private, gentle moment in a life that affords you very little privacy or gentleness. Sometimes your neighbors are awake, too. If the night is clear and moonlit, you might even see the faint glow of another hearth through a crack in a neighbor's shutter. The watch can be a communal experience. You might hear a neighbor's cough or the soft cry of a baby being soothed back to sleep. There are accounts of people visiting their neighbors during this time for a quiet chat by the fireside. The night is not a barrier. It is simply a different kind of time, with its own rules and its own social life. It's less a period of insomnia, more like a second, quieter, more contemplative evening that happens to fall in the middle of the night. You don't track the time. You have no way to. You simply exist in this state of quiet wakefulness for an hour, maybe two. Your body tells you when it's over. A familiar drowsiness begins to creep back in. The thoughts in your head slow down. Eyelids feel heavy. It's not a struggle. It's a natural transition. As easy as the one that woke you up. You have prayed. Have thought. You have connected with your wife. You have stoked the fire. The work of the watch is done. You settle back down on the straw. Pallet. Pull the blanket up to your chin and surrender to the dark once more. Worried about falling asleep. It is simply the next thing that happens. You close your eyes and drift into your second sleep. This is how the night is meant to be. This is your life, and you can't imagine it any other way. But a world is coming that will shatter this rhythm, a world of clocks and light that will declare your natural sleep a sickness. The second sleep is different from the first. The first is a deep dive into oblivion, driven by physical exhaustion. This second sleep is often lighter, more dream-filled. The immediate needs of the body have been met, and now the mind is free to wander in its own landscapes. Your dreams are vivid, shaped by the stories, fears, and beliefs of your world. You might dream of saints and angels, as the priest described them in his sermon. You might have nightmares of demons or the malevolent spirits said to inhabit the woods. You might dream of a bountiful harvest, the golden wheat stretching as far as the eye can see. Or you might dream a pang of anxiety of your Lord, the powerful, distant figure who controls your fate. You sleep until the world outside begins to change again. The first sign is the same as it was yesterday and the day before. The light. The thick blackness thins to gray, and the birds begin their morning chorus. The ever-punctual rooster unleashes his full-throated declaration that the night is officially over. The sounds of the village begin to filter into your consciousness. The same cow, the same blacksmith, the same slow, shuffling start to another day of labor. Waking from the second sleep feels different. It's less of a gentle surfacing and more of a summons. It's time to get up. It's time to work. There's a sense of finality to it. The rest of the night is over. Rise. Your body's still aching, but the deep weariness from the previous day has been washed away by the two tides of sleep. The rhythm of day begins again, a near-perfect repetition of the one before. The weak ale, the dense bread, the walk to the fields. The cycle is comforting in its predictability. It's the way your father lived, and his father before him. This pattern of sleep, first sleep, the watch, second sleep, is woven so deeply into the fabric of your existence that you don't even think about it. It's like breathing. It's just what you do. For centuries, this is how much of the world rests. The rhythm holds, a constant human experience across generations. But then, slowly, imperceptibly at first, things begin to change. The seeds of a great disruption are planted. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow creep, a gradual evolution that will eventually render your entire way of life and your way of sleeping obsolete. The first change is light. In the great cities, centuries after your time, the wealthy begin to push back the night. Streets that were once treacherous, dark passages are now illuminated by the soft, flickering glow of oil lamps. And later, the much brighter, harsher hiss of gaslight. The night is no longer an impassable wilderness of black. It's becoming a new frontier for social life. The rich can now attend parties, go to the theater, and gamble in coffee houses late into the evening. Staying up late, once the mark of a debauched wastrel, starts to become a sign of social status and sophistication. As the night is conquered by artificial light, the time available for sleep begins to get squeezed. There's simply less darkness to go around. The two leisurely sleeps with their meditative gap in the middle start to seem inefficient. The second, and more powerful, agent of change is the clock. In your world, time is fluid, organic. It's measured by the position of the sun, the crowing of the rooster, the ringing of the church bell for matins and vespers. But a new kind of time is emerging. Mechanical time. The invention and proliferation of the clock chops the day and night into neat, unforgiving, identical units. Hours, minutes, seconds. Time is no longer a river. It's a grid. And then comes the Industrial Revolution. This is the cataclysm. Factories are built, great brick behemoths that belch smoke into the sky. They run on this new mechanical time. They have schedules. They have shifts. And they have whistles that scream across the city, demanding that workers arrive at a precise hour, regardless of the season or the sun. You, or rather your descendants, are pulled from the fields into these factories. Your life is no longer governed by the natural rhythm of dawn and dusk, but by the tyrannical tick of the factory clock. Suddenly, your ancestral sleep pattern becomes a liability. You can't afford a leisurely 2-hour break in the middle of the night if you have to be at the factory gate at 6 a.m. Sharp, ready for a 12-hour shift of mind-numbing, repetitive labor. Sleep is no longer a 2-act play with a thoughtful intermission. It needs to be a single, consolidated, efficient block of unconsciousness. It needs to be as ruthlessly optimized as the factory assembly line. Waking up in the middle of the night is no longer a time for prayer and reflection. It's a source of anxiety. It's lost time. It's a bug in the new industrial machine. Doctors, who once prescribed different remedies for the first and second sleep, begin to change their tune. By the 19th century, they are writing about the importance of a single, uninterrupted night's sleep. Anything else is framed as a problem, a disorder. Waking in the night is no longer the watch. It's insomnia. The old ways are not just forgotten. They are pathologized. The medical establishment, reflecting the values of this new industrial age, sanctifies the 8-hour block. It becomes the gold standard, the very definition of a good night's sleep. Within a few generations, the memory of biphasic sleep is almost entirely erased from the public consciousness. It survives only as a fossil, buried in old books and forgotten diaries. People lie awake at 2 a.m., their bodies still trying to follow an ancient, ingrained biological clock. They feel broken. They feel like failures. They don't know that they are simply experiencing a ghost, an echo of a time when the night was divided in two. They don't realize they are trying to sleep like a 14th century farmer in a 21st century world that has no place for it. The irony is that the very modernity that destroyed your sleep pattern is now the thing people blame for their sleep problems. They blame stress. They blame caffeine. They blame the blue light from their screens. And all those things certainly don't help. But they miss the bigger picture. They miss the fact that our modern sleep anxieties might stem from a fundamental mismatch between our ancient biology and our relatively new industrial schedule. We are trying to force a round peg into a square hole, and we wonder why it doesn't fit. Your world, the world of the two sleeps, seems distant and impossibly rustic. It was a life of hardship, disease, and back-breaking labor that few of us would choose to return to. But in the heart of that world, in the deep, silent darkness of the night, possessed something that has been lost. You had a different relationship with the night and with your own consciousness. You had a sanctioned time for quiet, for reflection, for intimacy, for just being. A space free from the demands of work and the pressures of the day. It was a pause, an intermission built into the very structure of your rest. You didn't fight the night. You inhabited it. You didn't see waking as a failure. You saw it as an opportunity. As we lie awake tonight, staring at our own ceilings, it's worth remembering your quiet, fire-lit world. It's a reminder that the way we live now is not the only way to live. And the way we sleep now is not the only way to sleep. Your ghost watches us as we chase that elusive, perfect 8-hour block. And perhaps, just perhaps, it feels a little bit sorry for us. As our journey through the lost world of biphasic sleep concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Good night.